viewers, program, I'm Michael Saad. Our episode today is entitled Ethiopia, the Living Churches. It is mainly about the Ethiopian experience with Christ and Christianity, Ethiopian spirituality, civilization, monasticism, art, architecture, about the Ethiopian soul, the great Ethiopian soul. Can we do all of this in 90 minutes? Of course not. But we'll just present the tip of the iceberg, the touch of the divine, God's image on Ethiopian faces. We'll do that through the lens of this amazing, wonderful book, recently released, Ethiopia, the Living Churches of an Ancient Kingdom. The authors of the book, the two co-authors, are Ann Fitzgerald, the main author, with contributions from Philip Marsden. Ann Fitzgerald is a world-class author of books. Let me read one line from her biography. She has covered Eastern Africa for The Economist, the Financial Times, and the Sunday Times of London, and is the author of 11 books on Africa, including the best-selling book, Nomad, One Woman's Journey into the Heart of Africa. She lives in Kenya, and she went with the editors and the photographers to Ethiopia, not the first time in her life, but she is a frequent visitor there. And this looks like her life mission. If you go to YouTube and search for Ann Fitzgerald, you find her mission in life. She, besides being an author of best-selling books, she also works on the defense of abused women and children in the war-torn regions of Sudan and Kenya and East Africa in general. Our guests today are the co-editors of the book, Mrs. Carolyn Ludwig and Mr. Maurice Jackson, and also Mr. Bruce Ludwig, who is Carolyn's husband and also is trustee of the American University in Cairo, and also the promoter of this book, and you may call him project manager, who produced this amazing book and earlier books. We are going to talk about it. Most of the episode today has been recorded in a private setting right here in Logos TV with these three guests. So the program today will go through each item we mentioned: Coptic, Ethiopian monasticism, Ethiopian art, architecture, civilization, spirituality, history. We'll go through 6 sections, 6 parts of this episode, and that have been recorded previously. So part 1 is about the making of the book. It's an amazing project, short of a miracle. I call it a miracle, producing this book and earlier books. So let us watch section 1, interviewing the co-editors and the project manager, and marvel at how this book was created and earlier books, and listen about in 9-10 minutes to what Mrs. Ludwig says motivated her to do this series of books. It's a short of a miracle, or maybe a miracle itself. So let us watch section 1. Guests today are the co-editors, Mrs. Carolyn Ludwig, the editor of the book, and by Skype is Mr. Morris Jackson, who also a co-editor, and with us in the studio as well, Mr. Bruce Ludwig, who promoted the book and was the backbone of the entire project, and of course, husband of Mrs. Carolyn Ludwig. Welcome, the three of you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity. Mr. Morris Jackson is with us from San Francisco by Skype. This book is amazing. 524 pages, pictures and text, scholarship, and also accessible to the layman to read and enjoy. Oh my goodness. I showed it to my Ethiopian friends, and they were marveled. They were ecstatic how this book was produced with this such beauty and text and scholarship. And if I may also mention the contributors or co-authors of the book, Ann Fitzgerald and Philip Marsden.
Yes.
And the photographers, 5 of them, Nigel Bavet, Frederick Corbet, Justus Molenge, Carol Beckwith, Angela Fisher. 5 photographers. This is an international group of editors, authors, photographers.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are many others behind the curtains that you put then the names in the acknowledgement.
Yes, at American University in Cairo, they're publishing, co-publishers with us, and their team and their office really worked hard to get it finished on time for Christmas. We couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah, I see you making the acknowledgement to AUC Press, especially in memory of Mr. Werner Mark Lenz, who,
Yes.
God bless his soul, he departed in the year 2013, but you list a long acknowledgement of his contributions, and in fact, he made a huge development in AUC Press toward especially Christian and Coptic literature.
Yes,
Bruce, you are familiar with this.
Yes, of course. I'm a trustee of the American University in Cairo and have been for, gosh, almost 30 years, I would guess, and knew Mark Lenz very well. And Mark was the president of AUC Press when we did the first 2 books, The Churches of Egypt and Old Cairo, and was so instrumental in that. And when it became the idea to do the book on the churches of Ethiopia, Mark was still alive and gave us lots of encouragement, and was very, very enthusiastic about doing it. And unfortunately, he passed as we were working on the book, which took almost 5 years to complete and publish. And now Nigel Holland Jones is the president of AUC Press, and he was the fellow that finished everything up.
Mm-hmm. It's a huge project, international writing and production team, and also the AUC Press. And the book is also published in the United States by Ludwig Publications Incorporation. And we'll show on the screen how to get a copy of the book from Ludwig Publishing. Yes, the email address is there. And
well, let me say, you mentioned the 5 photographers. And lots of people, when they look at the book, they say, my goodness, 5 different photographers. Why? Well, this was the most complicated book that Carolyn has taken on. And it really required photographers that were able to specialize in people and crowds and colors, as well as architectural photographers, as well as someone who was willing to be in a helicopter. We had to use a helicopter to get some of the shots of the mountain monasteries and the mountain churches, to be in a helicopter with the door off and be able to shoot in with all the wind and noise. So it took 5 different photographers with 5 different specialties. The 2 ladies Carol Beckwith and Angela Fisher are National Geographic photographers. They've done probably a dozen different books on the African continent, including a book on parts of Ethiopia that they had done themselves. So they were delighted to be back in Ethiopia and photograph most of the festivals and holidays in the book.
I'll just show one photograph here on the screen.
Yes.
This must have been taken by helicopter.
Yes, that certainly is one, yes.
Yeah, and I will show more of this kind of photographs.
That's the only window in that monastery.
Yeah, yeah. So AUC Press in Egypt also can, the book is available there throughout Egypt, but also throughout the world, because AUC Press is accessible, and Amazon.com.
Correct.
And other book selling outlets.
Any book in America, or any bookstore can get it in America or almost anywhere, and they can order it, and it can be brought into their bookstore. If they don't have it, you can order it.
Yeah. Yes. Prior to Ethiopia book, Carolyn Ludwig has edited this book, The Churches of Egypt. We made the previous episodes about the churches of Egypt, and also the history and religious heritage of Old Cairo, its fortress, churches, synagogue, and mosque. So, and even earlier, there is Jewel Among Us, the churches of Los Angeles.
Jewels in Your Crown, the churches of Los Angeles. And Morris Jackson designed all 4 of these books.
Yes.
And we could not have done it without him. And as I understand it, the last book on Ethiopia has received 2nd prize internationally for the Prose Award. So, and the Churches of Egypt also won for architecture. Is that right, Morris?
Yes.
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 And the good news is that the Churches of Egypt, thanks to the Coptic community all over the world, is in its 3rd or 4th printing now, and it has been printed also in Arabic, and it is available in Egypt in Arabic. So we're quite proud of the acceptance of the book by those the book is about.
Yes, yes. These are outstanding books, and it's a miracle producing these books. Even some of the production was during the turmoil of the revolutions from 2011 onward.
Well,
so this is a great achievement.
We would have to add and certainly acknowledge Garat Gabra, who was our Coptic scholar on the 2 Ethiopian books, or the 2 Egyptian books, I'm sorry. And he has done any number of books on his own with the Coptic civilization and the treasures of Coptic art, and on and on. We couldn't have done it without him either.
Yes.
And Zahi.
And Zahi Awas, who gave us all the permission required to do this. So it would be very difficult to for somebody else to replicate this book. And the sad part is, since we did the Churches of Egypt book and Old Cairo, there have been 180 Coptic churches, businesses, and homes destroyed.
Yes.
Including some of the churches that were in the book and others. And I would have to give credit to the Egyptian army, because they have stepped in and have rebuilt many of the Coptic churches. But it was a very sad several years when the church was being attacked from all sides.
Yeah, so it's a good, as you said, Dr. Zahi Hawass, in his capacity as head of the
Antiquities Organization. Yes.
Right, and so you got permissions from the Egyptian government, and I remember Pope Shenouda, God bless his soul, also authorized photography in all monasteries and Coptic churches.
Yes.
So, and likewise, perhaps for Ethiopia, how did I want to do 2 things. Let me start with Carolyn. You are American-born, American. Los Angeles girl.
That's right.
Hollywood. Proud of that too.
Hollywood girl.
Why on earth you start all of these projects about churches of Egypt and Ethiopia. How did it start?
Well, in the first place, I've been blessed by the Lord all my life. I always knew He had His hand on my shoulder. I don't know why, but I knew it. And Bruce started going to Egypt through Kent Weeks, the well-known professor, and helping him to find tombs in the Valley of Kings. And then when we would get over there, friends would ask if they could go to Egypt with us. So we took several trips with friends, and as we were walking through, I would hear the guides talking about the Holy Family here, the Holy Family there, or I would see little pamphlets or booklets at each church that we got to go in that would talk about the miracles that Christ as a child performed. And I started thinking, what? I need more. Where is it more? And so Bruce was part of finding the largest tomb ever in the Valley of Kings with Kent Weeks, and that happened, and that was very good for Egypt because that restarted some of the tourism that had stopped. And then I started talking to Mark Linz at AUC Press. Finish. I go to Rome with our daughter Pamela, and they had just delivered the first book, The Churches of Los Angeles, and I was asleep, and all of a sudden I heard Carolyn, and it was the Holy Virgin Mother, Mary. And she said, "Show our journey in Egypt." I sat up and said to Pam, I woke her up and said, "I know what the second book is." And she said, "You haven't sold the first one." And I don't care, I know what it is. And that's where we started with Sharif Sonbal, the wonderful photographer. And we got that one done, The Journey of the Holy Family. And then Old Cairo came through Got It.
Yeah.
And I just knew every time a door would close on the churches of Egypt, when we were trying to get these photographs and get into certain churches and so on, I knew it was going to be okay. Nothing ever happened that we couldn't fix. And so then, after the Old Cairo book, I knew my passion is to show the Orthodox churches of the Mideast to the Western world, and to show and prove to them that we're all together, shoulder to shoulder as Christians, and loving Jesus as we do, together, and we must stay together. And this is my way of exposing that to them, and I have loved every second of it.
If I may mention that you are Catholic throughout your life, and that and that collaboration and Christian fellowship between Catholics and Orthodox, you are a great embodiment of that. That your Catholic faith is inspiring you to do good for the Orthodox people and monuments and living churches and living monasteries. And Bruce, you are an amazing husband who really contributed tremendously to all of these projects from one book to the other.
Well, when Carolyn gets an idea, it becomes our idea,
Yes.
and needs to be accomplished.
Yes.
And fortunately, she has the talent to be able to assemble the team of people like Morris, who's worked with us on every book, as Carolyn has said. And together they formulate what they need, and then we go out and hire the expertise, photographers, text writers, historians,
Yes.
and the like, to fill in all the gaps. And so far it's been very successful. And people ask, well, why Ethiopia? Why? I know your involvement, the Ludwig involvement in Egypt for decades. Why Ethiopia? And that's an interesting story, and I think you can probably give some good background as to why it was logical for us to do that. We know what it is, but maybe your audience would be interested in the historic side of the Coptic Church with Ethiopian Orthodox.
I love to do that for both two reasons. As you said, my program is Coptic Civilization, as it shows on the screen behind me, and also the relationship between the Coptic Church and the Ethiopian Church runs this way. Christianity entered Ethiopia in the 1st century by the apostles themselves. We read in the book of Acts that Philip preached to the minister of Candace, the queen of Ethiopia.
Yes.
And so Christianity arrived as much as the same time of, or even before many other places, perhaps before Rome, and
certainly before Rome.
Maybe before Egypt. So with the minister of the Empress of Ethiopia, but the hierarchy, the church structure, was perhaps not built in later development of hierarchical structures of early church until Saint Athanasius, the 20th Patriarch of Alexandria, ordained Frumentius as the first bishop in Ethiopia, and since then the Ethiopian Church was considered as a daughter church of the Coptic Church in Egypt. And the Coptic Patriarch always ordained the bishop or later metropolitan of Addis Ababa until 1959, when the metropolitan was elevated to the rank of Patriarch Catholicos, maintaining the continued relationship with the Coptic Church. In 1971, both the Coptic Patriarch and the Ethiopian Patriarchs died within months from each other, and the Ethiopian Church decided to be independent, and they ordained the next Patriarch, Patriarch Theophilus, but with participation from the Coptic bishops. They flew to Addis Ababa to ordain the new Patriarch of Addis Ababa. Then the communist revolution came in 1994, and the devastation of both Ethiopia and the Ethiopian Church happened until the communist government was removed by a liberation army. And in 1994, relationship between the Ethiopian Church and the Coptic Church in its new phase was formulated in a communique and mutual agreement that was signed by the two synods in 1994. And since then, patriarchs of Alexandria and Addis Ababa exchanged visits since then up till today.
Yes.
So that's a good relationship. So that's so much in common and so much different. And this book tells more about this relationship which I explained, and also about the theology and the monasticism and art and music and culture and 20 other things. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. Beautiful history. It's a great country of Ethiopia, great people. One correction, I made a slip of a tongue during the talking about the history of Ethiopian Church, the recent history, that the communist revolution or revolt happened in 1974. I misspoken and said 1994. In 1974, the overthrow of the great man, the great Emperor Haile Selassie, unfortunately happened and succeeded, and they killed the emperor, and he's considered by many as maybe a saint. For me, he's a pious man who always loved his country and loved Africa, and was instrumental on the foundation of the Organization for African Unity, and which in recognition of that, all African countries elected to make Addis Ababa the center of the organization. The good news, since we taped this episode with the three guests, great news, glad tidings happened regarding the Ethiopian Church reconciliation when the what's called the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front in 1991 overthrown the communists. One bad thing or byproduct happened is that the existing patriarch at the time, Abuna Mercurius, was exiled to the United States. The Ethiopian churches in the United States did not like that, and they banded around him and declared independence from the mother church. That lasted for 27 years. The Ethiopian church at home in Addis Ababa and the whole Ethiopia had no relationship with the most of the Ethiopian church in the diaspora under Patriarch Mercurius in the diaspora, and under currently Abuna Matthias in Addis Ababa, the patriarch there. On the 27th of July in Washington, D.C., there was a big meeting attended by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who played a key role in reconciling the two parts of the church. And in his presence, the two synods in Washington, D.C. declared reconciliation and starting a new episode in the church history. Great civilization, great spirituality. Reconciliation happened. Patriarch Mercurius returned to Addis Ababa from exile along with the Prime Minister, and they declared the merger of the two synods, the continuation of two canonical patriarchs, and one of them will be administrative, looking after the administrative affairs of the church. That's Abuna Matthias or Matthias. Abuna Mercurius, the exiled patriarch, will have the same honor of a patriarch, and but will not have administrative power. That's a great thing. Salutation to Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who, to my knowledge, although he has a Muslim father and a Christian Ethiopian mother, he adopted Christianity, and he took power in a few months ago in the spring, about I think March or April 2018, and since then he has been a reconciler. He made this reconciliation happen. He also stretched arms to neighboring countries, especially Eritrea, for border disputes. So congratulations to our brothers and sisters of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church for this step. One thing why we appreciate and this program, many reasons why Ethiopia episode would be on a Coptic civilization TV program, for many reasons. The bondage between the two churches, as mentioned in what you heard earlier, But one special aspect that we have been talking about in our program is that many manuscripts that were in Coptic have been translated, or Arabic, have been translated to Amharic or Ge'ez. Ge'ez is the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Church, and Amharic is the secular language. So many of these documents have been translated from Coptic and Arabic to Amharic or Ge'ez. And the original Coptic or Arabic have been lost forever. And then now we have the Ethiopic manuscripts. Now we can translate them back to Arabic and read them ourselves, or English and French, all of the above. So many languages have been translating these Ethiopian documents, and they all relate to Coptic history, Coptic hagiography. For example, the Chronicle of John of Nicoya, in Arabic more known as Johannes of Nicoya. He was a bishop at the time of the Arab invasion of Egypt in 641, and he wrote about the disaster of the invasion and describing it in lamentation literature. And the original Arabic was lost, and the Ethiopic translation now exists. Something else, the Book of Enoch that we know from the Epistle of Judah that it existed, but it again, it was pre-existing in Coptic but lost, but the Ethiopic translation from Coptic still exists. So these are just examples of treasures that Coptic civilization owe it to Ethiopian civilization, among many other things where if we have time today, we will come back to it. But I want to move now to part 2 of our episode today, which is about monuments and tradition in Ethiopia. It's a short section, about 6 minutes, that will cover the an amazing 2 churches in particular. One is St. George in Lalibela district. Lalibela is in the north of Ethiopia, as we saw in the map, and that church is built underground. We'll see how marvelous it is. And the other coverage will be about St. Mary of Zion, where the Ark of the Covenant is believed to have been transported from Jerusalem to Ethiopia early on before the Babylonian captivity in 700 BC. By putting a replica in Jerusalem, and the original was taken to Ethiopia for protection because the prophets knew that the invasion of the Babylonians is coming. So they put this replica and let the original go to Ethiopia. There is a lot to read about this in the book, but we'll see to get a taste of what the church looks like and the ceremonies of the tabut, or the Ark of the Covenant. And mind you, there is in every Ethiopian church a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. In the Amharic language is named tabut, which is also the same word in Arabic. And there is annual celebration of the tabut in January. I happened to attend one of them and enjoyed it very much. You will see a glimpse of it in part 2. Please tell us which part of Ethiopia did you work and produced in the book?
Well, most of the churches, the underground rock churches and the monasteries and the I'm going to call it very civilized part of Ethiopia, is in the north. In the south, you've got the Omo River and very traditional peoples, and it's very rough and rugged and traditional people. So most of this has all been in the north, from Lalibela to Gondar to well, that whole area in there, where it's just pocketed with churches.
In those orange areas on the map, the orange.
Yes. The three triangles in the
Yes.
map, at the top of the map.
They tie into the book. Into
The book
pages
covers
yeah.
these three areas.
Yes.
And Addis Ababa, just for reference, is in the center here.
Yes.
As the mouse is moving. That's Addis Ababa. And is this Lake Tana here?
Yes.
Yes. And the project of a dam. So back, let us see the next picture. I will move it to. This church is fantastic. It's amazing. If the camera can zoom a little out to show more of it, if possible. Can you tell us, Morris, about the picture, the underground picture, or the two of you? Please volunteer to talk us about
that's St. George's in Lalibela. It's one of the first of the rock-carved churches, and as you see, it's carved straight into the ground, 4 stories deep, in the form of a cross. And there's a lot of the pictures in the book of the various shots of that and of the worshipers in the church. But this is probably one of the most famous and well-known of the churches in Ethiopia, because it is so striking that it's at ground level, and then the church is created by carving away the rock from the church. And there's windows there, and of course there's doors, and it's just a true masterpiece. But there are many of the same type rock-cut churches down into the rock or into the rock of a mountain.
And those churches look more like a usual building, and you can go inside them. But this one is very special. And King Lalibela did have a dream, and he was told to build churches, and there they are.
Come back to it, but I want Mr. Morris to reflect on slide number 2. I'll show it on the screen first, and then invite you to reflect on it. Please.
This is St. Mary Tyson in Addis Ababa, and it is one of my favorite churches. The image here is the entrance to the church, with the guardhouses on the left and right. And in the back is another building where the Ark of the Covenant is kept, which I think is pretty amazing. And it just gives you a feeling of history. What really came home to me on working on this book was that this is where this happened. This is the land of the Queen of Sheba. This is just all this stuff. And the Queen of Sheba's son brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. And it's been placed, it was, I think, first on an island monastery, and now it's been placed in here. And it is unavailable to be seen by the public.
Let me hold a second to show the pictures on the screen. That's slide 2. So what is slide 2?
The front.
The front of the Church of Mary of Zion.
Is that where the Ark of the Covenant is?
No.
No, that is in a building behind it.
Okay. And now slide 3 is like a procession?
Yes, it's every month. Every church celebrates its patron saint with a monthly feast day. And this is the feast of St. Mary. The priest in the center of the photograph, I don't know if you can pick him out, he's under the umbrella, and he's carrying the tablet on his head. And a tablet is the Ark of the Covenant, symbolizes the Ark of the Covenant for each church, and it's richly wrapped in gorgeous fabric. And the procession starts about 5 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark, and the followers carry lit tapers, and they march around the square chanting and
all in white.
all in white. Great. And they get back to the church right at dawn. I think slide 4 shows the immensity of the crowd. And those that aren't marching line the sides of the street. And this is a very solemn and beautiful procession.
Beautiful.
Celebrating Mary.
Yes, yes. Yes, yes, that's beautiful. There is so much to learn and read, and many more photographs about the Art of the Covenant Church, about St. George Church, about Lalibela. Lalibela was envisioned by the king of the time, because when the Arabs invaded Jerusalem, he saw in a dream the city of Jerusalem and wanted to build a new Jerusalem in Ethiopia. And that's the story of the Lalibela district and these wonderful churches. So we come to part 3, which shows us some art and architecture, especially the way it was constructed by carving churches out of stone, either underground or in the mountain. Amazing views. And by the way, we are showing only here, as I said before, the tip of the iceberg. Like we may show you today, in total, maybe 80 pictures, but this book is 524 pages, full of pictures. I just show you here. Some pages are full of pictures, some have text, some have mixed text and pictures. So, and each picture is described in a caption, here and there. So we have only 90 minutes, so we'll move now to part 3 to show also, beside the monuments, show some glimpses of monastic life. How does it look like to be a monk in the Ethiopian desert? Let us watch part 3. What is slide number 5, Mr. Jackson?
That is one of the island monasteries. I'm not sure which one it is, but you're viewing the sanctuary and the roof. And this is what gets me, is the beauty of the detail in all these places. You know, how colorful it is, all the icons. Everything tells a story. At one point, a lot of people in Ethiopia, as well as elsewhere in the world, could not read, but they learned to read the icons. They could tell you the story from the Bible from just looking at the icons. They knew the saints, they knew the events, and I think that is amazing. Just whenever Carolyn and I were looking at the images, we could figure out what the story was from just looking at the icons.
Yeah, and it's important to keep teaching that because younger people look at them and think they're like a cartoon, but they don't really understand them. Right. And it's so important to keep teaching how to read a church, how to read an icon.
Yes. So you get the story from the icon, but also you can pray with the icon.
Yes.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Right. Not to the icon, but with the icon.
Using the story
Yes.
of their sacrifice,
Yes.
taking it to your heart and learning from it.
Yes.
And that's what it's meant to. It's not meant to worship.
Right. So, if I may show slide number 10. Slide number 10, people using ropes to arrive to the top of a
That's not there.
mountain. What? Have you been there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you can't get up to that church without being hauled up on that rope. And you see the gentleman down below, the priest, is fairly old, but very strong, and has been hefting people up for many years. And that's how they get their food. And in early Christianity, you know, it was very important to be hidden into some of these areas. Sometimes the priests would go up, or hermits, and not come down for a long, long time. People would hoist up food to them as a gift, but now they don't really have to hide so much.
But yes, the photographers had to do the same rope climb in many of the churches that we photographed, or up ladders, or just had to climb up the mountain and to enter the church and to be able to take their photographs.
And they were also carrying equipment with them as they went
very
up.
very heavy equipment, and
That's
lights
right.
and everything else, because these are pretty dark places in many cases, and so they had to use lights to light up some of those dark places to get the photographs.
And inside these monasteries, as we see in slide number 14, we see paintings on
Yes.
the pillars of the church or the monastery. And slide number 14, is that...
The monastery that we were looking at previously in slide number 10 is Deborah Damo Monastery. And in slide number 14, is it?
Yes.
That is Miriam Quate, and it's a different monastery. And the columns are, the pillars are axamite, I think. And there's also a term for the part that sticks out on top of the column, which I have somewhere, but I will bring it up at a later point.
Right. Can we go to slide 15? What do you think of slide 15 and
Okay.
and
Slide
16?
15 is Worko Mariam. The three doors are to the anteroom. The small caves around were once used by hermits.
And all of this carving is done from the top down. They don't bring those columns in there. They carve them in there from the rock. And it's quite a feat of accomplishment.
Wow.
Well, you saw
Carved in
slide 14 had that is a church. It is just a big boulder, and they have carved the church into that boulder. And as Morris said, the hillside behind is just covered with small caves that they've carved out, which is where the hermits and monks would live for
Decades.
Yeah, yeah. I see in slide 16, for example, this monk praying inside these cells carved in the stone. Amazing. Slide 17 shows also the interior of a church, like a sanctuary.
That is a stone altar. The cupola above is inset with a cross.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
you can also see the striations in the rock. And I think the altar was also carved from the same rock that the rest of the room was carved out of. Usually the altars are covered, and you see the fabric above, and usually I think it is dropped down during most of the time.
The piety of Ethiopian monks and righteous people is really obvious as they, in slide 22, for example, as they sit and read and pray in such harsh places. And in slide 23, and so on. So that's an amazing dedication.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is in Mehem Alam Adi Kaso, and that is, the priest is actually reading from the book of Psalms.
Yeah.
The ceiling is really beautifully carved in that photograph.
And now, slide 23, we see a church. What is this church, Morris?
It is Michael Imba.
Uh-huh.
And if you go to the next side, you will see a view towards the west. The reliquary chamber in the foreground is used for manuscripts. It's on the right of the photograph. You can see it in the niche.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And everywhere in all these churches, we see these beautiful rugs on the floor, and they stack them. They may be 5 or 10 rugs underneath each one of them. And I think, Carolyn, isn't the nicer ones on the bottom or something like that?
Yes, they protect them. Keep them clean. Of course, no one is allowed in the church without, they have to take their shoes off. And so it's relative, but it's all dirt roads and paths up to the church. They're kept very clean.
The next one would be 25, which is the same church. It is one of my favorites. I love the striped walls. This is a good example of craftsmanship and also building with the monkey heads. The round balls that you see on the wall is actually a beam sticking through from the other side. And also, one of the criteria that Carolyn and I had was we wanted to show architecture, we wanted to show crosses, because all the crosses are very unique in Ethiopia. Each church almost has its own signature cross. Mm-hmm. And we also wanted to show other things like drums, prayer sticks, bells, whatever is a symbol of a religion.
Speaking of crosses, I'll show on the screen now from another set 3 clergy carrying crosses on the screen. That shows the Ethiopians take pride in creating different shapes of crosses, and at the same time you can say, when you see a cross, you can say, oh, this must be Ethiopian cross. That I'm showing on the screen now.
Well, they're very distinctive, and each, if not each church, each area has their own
province
design. Some are wood, some are brass. They had wood. Did I say wood?
Right, yeah. Okay, which slide you would like to do next?
Number 26, which is Michael Deborah Salem, and it has the beautifully carved windows. Again, it's the handicraft, the craftsmanship in these buildings or these churches that is so amazing. that they were created hundreds and hundreds of years ago with rudimentary tools, and they still hold up, still beautiful. And on the window, there is an icon, on the exterior window, is an icon of St. Mary, and it gets shut sometimes. So, yeah, it's just, the craftsmanship is just amazing.
And the artists, there are several different visions of Mary in iconography in the churches, and they're all beautiful.
Also in Ethiopia, Mary is one of the most important saints that they have. Mm-hmm. You see in most of these churches, there's always depictions of Mary, the life of Mary, Mary and Jesus, the Madonna and Child, is in every church, I believe.
Great. Next slide would be what?
Let's go to 30.
Okay, I'm showing 30 now on the screen.
Okay, this is a mural in the narthex of Abrea wa Stabiaha. I'm horrible at pronouncing these names, but this again is, you see the Madonna and Child, or Mary and Jesus on the left.
No.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it is, the story of saints. There's a saint kind of in the middle of the image that a bird is flying in. I don't remember his name, but the bird would take water from his eye. Do you remember that saint, Carolyn?
Yeah, I was happy to read in the book the names and respect. You have a section about the Ethiopian saints.
Yes.
Or saints that are venerated in Ethiopia. I can relate to Tekla Himenot and to Saint Mercurius. And of course, Saint Mercurius is venerated also in Egypt tremendously. And St. George, of course.
Of course.
And both of them were more from Asia.
Equestrian.
Yes. So that's a great thing. So that's, the book has very good section on festivals and saints and Christmas and besides monasteries and churches. So that's amazing. Okay.
Someone mentioned the prayer sticks, and that it's really kind of interesting because many of the priests and monks are older, and the services are long, and the prayer stick would go under their arm, and they would lean on that and to be able to relax a little bit during the hours and hours and hours of service.
So,
on 1 foot at the time. And I remember, is it Tekla Hemant that lost his foot? So he had to stand with the prayer stick?
And many. If they have a lame foot or a lame leg or whatever it is, they lean against it. But anyone gets tired after standing for a long, long time.
yes, Saint Tekla Himenot is one of the Ethiopian saints, highly venerated in the Coptic Church in Egypt and in the diaspora. And there are a few Coptic churches named after Saint Tekla Himenot, the Ethiopian. And the Coptic Church celebrates his feast day on the 30th of August, which based on the Coptic month and day of 24th of Mesra, which was only a few days ago. So I wanted to also mention that the formal name of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahido Church, You may go around and see a building, always had this title, Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahido Church. Tawahido has a meaning, of course, in Ethiopian, but also it's similar name in Arabic. Tawahido means tawhid or unity, and it is formally meant to describe that the Ethiopian Church is one of the Oriental Orthodox churches, which includes themselves, the Ethiopians and the Copts and the Syriac and the Armenian and the Malankara in India and the Eritrean church. And the Ethiopian Church is the largest in population of all Oriental churches, because the numbers of Ethiopian Orthodox are between 45 and 50 million people, mainly, of course, in Ethiopia, but some in the diaspora. And perhaps it is the second largest Orthodox in general in population, the largest being the Russian Orthodox Church, maybe 100 million in Russia. I'm not sure if there is any other autonomous Orthodox Church between Russia and Ethiopia. So, but the great thing, they are witnesses of Christ and living the Christian life at its best in terms, especially under severe hardship, whether it is famine, like in the early 70s, whether it is drought and famine, whether it is economic disaster, like during the communist times and violence. And there are many enemies of Ethiopia who like to invade it culturally or religiously or. So God bless the Ethiopian people. Back to the meaning of Tawahido, meaning what they mean is that they are Miaphysites, not Monophysites, as unfortunately the ignorance and ignorant people name the Ethiopians and the Copts and the Armenians and the Syriacs Monophysites. These churches consider this an insult, but it is a false accusation of being Monophysites, because Monophysitism is meant in the dictionary of theology that the human nature of Christ disappeared in his divine nature as the drop of wine or vinegar would disappear in the ocean. That was a heresy by Eutychus, who was a monk living in Constantinople in the 4th century or 5th century. But that's not Oriental Orthodox. The Oriental Orthodox are Miaphysite, as Saint Cyril of Alexandria, the 24th Patriarch of Alexandria, taught the word Miaphysitism, which means the unity of the two natures that merged in Christ, his divine and human natures, which united without mingling, without confusion, and without alteration. That's where the name Tawahido comes in the formal title of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahido Church. Now we move to part number 4, which is again more on art, more on monastic life, more on mountains, the richness of Ethiopia. Let us watch part 4.
We're going to kind of skip to a festival, and that is slide 31, which is coming up. And this is Unku Tatash. And we're looking at a priest and dragons in scrumptious robes, reading the liturgy. The parishioners are in white, and that is an amazingly beautiful cross that's held high. Mm-hmm. And again, you get the beautiful icons in the background. And in the next slide, 32, we have the parishioners singing and playing drums, with their lighted tapers. This takes place at night. So I think the drums in a lot of these places are finely decorated and are just beautiful.
It's remarkable that drums are part of the musical instruments of the Ethiopian Church, even during the liturgy.
Yes.
So that's a nice tradition.
And like symbols or whatever they are too. That
symbols, triangle. Yeah.
Go to 35. And that is a shot of Abuna Gabriel Michael. And just look at that background, that rugged scenery, and how gorgeous that is. Then we'll go to the next slide, which is 36. And I think this is one of the most beautiful domes in any of the churches. I love the blue and yellow. And it is a dome in the center that depicts the 12 elders of the apocalypse. And it's just, to me, one of the really amazing, because it's unique in the color. And then going to the next slide, which is 37, which is a view of the transcript looking from south to north, and how the columns are decorated, the dome, and how the floor, this is different for the floor. It's almost like stones with concrete between them, but I don't know if it is or not. That's just a lovely picture. I would move on to 38 now, which is Abuna Yamata in the Geralta Mountains.
Yeah, we are showing it on the screen. Is this like a helicopter picture?
This one was a helicopter scene, not the priest standing in the open door. They were inside by then, but...
Well, you can actually see the priest about a third of the way up, in about the middle of the... He's wearing white, and you can see how huge this place is and how far they're up. And also with this church, there is an area where you have to walk on a plank that's about 12 inches wide with a sheer drop off this cliff.
Down below here.
It's amazing, and also speaks to the dedication of the people that go there, the worshipers that go there.
Well, and the photographers that go there. Even though the shot was taken by a helicopter, then Nigel and Malingi and Marianne all had to climb up there as well to get the interior shots.
Yeah.
So the helicopter was just used for establishment shots to show what a massive place that is, but then the photographers had to crawl up there.
What's next slide you like?
Let's just go in order. It's slide 39, and that is a priest reading a manuscript, and you can see the mountains in the background.
Yes.
And the light on that is just perfect.
It is. Can we get a close-up of this manuscript that he's reading? Because some of these Bibles they all have hand paintings in them, but some of them are particularly good and beautiful.
So let's move on to 40, which is a fresco of Abuna Yamata and his entourage. And then the following image is one of my favorites. Again, I have too many favorites, I think. The dry air and the lack of humidity have helped preserve the ceiling frescoes. On the left of the cupola are 8 of the 9 saints, and on the right are the 9 apostles.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and the geometric designs around, and I'm sure there are lots of stories in the icons going around them as well. It's quite...
Okay.
So unexpected when you're walking through these areas, when you see this site from the outside, and then going inside to all of this beauty and paintings, really lovely.
And also, you have to remember that all this was carved out of the stone.
Yeah, we'll show it on the screen picture.
Yes, on 44, it's, you know, all the arches and everything were carved from the stone.
Yeah.
And then painted. The following, let's go to slide 46. And this is Abba Daniel Kukor, and this is a priest standing outside of the entrance to the church.
Is that like on a cliff? He's standing on a cliff or something?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, standing on a cliff, risking his life, but for a worthy cause, perhaps, going to church. And but that's the way monks live now and lived in the past. In Ethiopia, they carved their cells and churches at 1,000, 2,000 feet high up in the mountain, and made it so difficult for others to seek them. And we know the same with Saint Anthony of Egypt by the Red Sea, his monastery, and his cell or cave takes 2-3 hours to climb the mountain to get there. And he lived there away from people. And glorious time of monastic life, good examples, role models. I want to say that Ethiopia has been in the Bible from the book of Genesis throughout. Just to go to Google and put Kosh or Ethiopia, and you will get, in the modern translations, they put Ethiopia. In the old translations, they put Kosh. Kosh is the son of Ham, the son of Noah. And Ham begat Kosh, as mentioned in the book of Genesis, his oldest son, who is the father of the Ethiopians, and also Misraim, the father perhaps of the Egyptians, and others. So Ethiopians and Egyptians, according to biblical tradition, are cousins. I'm happy to hear that. And I wanted to say that also in the biblical tradition, the prophet Moses, the greatest among prophets, was married to a Cushite and an Ethiopian lady. And that means that some Ethiopians traveled north, that she met him, and they both fell in love with each other, the great prophet and an Ethiopian woman. And God was happy for this mutual love. And guess what? Miriam, the prophetess, sister of Moses, and Aaron, the high priest, also brother of Moses, were unhappy for that marriage and criticized Moses among themselves. And God did not want this to pass without punishment. And Mary and Aaron was stricken with disease, obvious kind of disease, that they cried to God, and God told Moses they have to repent from this sin. And Moses interceded on their behalf, and God said, I will not lift the disease from Maryam before a whole week so she can learn the lesson. And it's a nice story to read it in the book of Numbers. Or just Google Moses, Cushite wife, Miriam, the prophetess, you will find the story. We move to part 5 of the discussion with the Ludwigs and Morris Jackson about another section of their book. And this, again, we go into art and carved churches and how these colors survived hundreds of years in these countries. It's high tech to make these colors survive. We know that in our time with the modern technology, colors fade and before you know it. But these ancient civilizations in Egypt, in Ethiopia, in Nubia, you find these amazing, in China, India, these amazing chemicals and colors, mostly natural material, of course, at that time, survive till today. Let us watch part 5.
One of the unique paintings on the side of the wall. This is Saint Mercurius on his horse. And now they have started, or in a lot of the icons, they have named the saints. So I think this is, and also this is a different style that we've been seeing. A little bit more primitive, I think, but still equally as beautiful.
Okay. And
then I would go to slide 48. Again, this is something really unique. It is a fan, and this is a priest with a 15th century meter-wide ceremonial fan depicting Mary and child, apostles, saints, and prophets and archangels.
And this one is very rare because there are, I think, 7 left out of all of this from the 15th century. And this one is in relatively good condition. That kind of breaks my heart that he marches out with this and shows it every like this, because I don't know how long it can stay perfect almost. It's a little ripped.
Wow, very important treasure.
It is.
As an artifact from centuries ago.
It should be in a museum, really.
Yeah.
So many in this book that's just, you keep going, and you never thought that things like this ever existed.
Yes, that's beautiful.
And this, I think, is in Abuna Abraham, Deborah Tyson, and in, let's go to slide 50. And left of the pillar are niches carved out of the rock, and it looks like they have icons or portraits of saints and monks in them. In the back right, you see a group of prayer sticks, and the wooden structure looks like a branch is a bench that the priests and parishioners sit on.
Those are prayer sticks too, I think,
Yeah.
Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the corner.
Yes. And again, look at the different colors in the rock. It's just really unusual.
So much dedication to worship that they digged these places of worship in the rock.
Yeah.
That's not a small undertaking.
Oh.
Can you imagine how many tons
Yes.
that have been taken out of this?
Right. Yeah. Monumental effort.
Yes.
And this may be at a high elevation,
Yes.
Yes.
1,000, 2,000,
Yeah.
3,000 feet.
Could be, or it could be right on, right at the bottom of the rock. But
Yeah.
it's, it is a feat of love and faith.
Yes. Right. Okay, what's next?
Number 51 is just the entrance to Johannes Mikuni.
Uh-huh.
And then we go to 52, which is the nave ceiling. And it's been likened to the hull of a boat.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get that feeling with the geometric designs and the saints. And you can see two different styles of paintings, one in the ceiling and then a different, slightly different style on the sides.
Mm.
And all the geometric detail is just unbelievably beautiful. And then if we go to slide number 55, it's, okay, yes, and this has been carved, and the robe on the priest is just amazing. I think Nigel did an incredible job of capturing the mood and the color and the really religious aspect of all these places.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we go to slide 56, and this is a clergy holding a taper at a service that he's giving. The next slide, 57.
You see the seraphim there?
Yeah.
Yes. In 57 is the elaborately painted main door to the church. And above it you have we would go to 58, which is Abba Yahani Monastery. And you can see where it is midway up the cliff.
How in the world did they get up there?
Yeah, the white piece.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll show it on the screen. This is the church here, or monastic life.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we go to slide number 59, I'm sorry.
59.
And this is a portrait of the church's patron, Abba Yohani. And again, it's a different style. And it's more black and white rather than color. The next slide is a mural of the 12 apostles.
Number 60.
Number 60.
Yes.
Which, with the robes and everything are just... And you also see another, I think it's also Abba Yohani down in the lower left.
These paintings are not as primitive looking as some. And there was a period when the Jesuits came to Ethiopia.
Yes.
And they tried to change the Ethiopians' painting style to their style, which European style would be a little bit more muscular, realistic looking. And the Ethiopians made them leave. They didn't like to change.
Yes.
And
yes.
so sometimes you can see some of their influence, and in maybe their clothing looks a little bit more realistic with folds in it and shadows. But I think it still remains, it's nice to remain Ethiopian.
Right, yeah, yeah. So we have the Italian, the Ethiopian, the Coptic, the Egyptian,
That's right.
the Cappadocian, and so on.
Armenian.
Around the world, Armenian, American, European. So to have diversity and richness. Wow. Worshippers dressed in white?
This is the entrance to St. George, the church that is carved in the shape of a cross.
At the bottom.
It may well be that this is Christmas time or, they see they're all wearing white. Some of the ladies are wearing blue. The ladies enter on the right side of the church, the south side, and the men are to the left. They have to enter as the Coptic church and separate doors.
It's only logistics, convenience. There is no symbolism around it, or just a matter of the way things can be done.
The way
Maybe
it
in
is?
Ethiopia they have a meaning
Yes,
for it.
well, it is.
I don't know.
Yeah,
But that's
I
what
think
they do.
right,
you,
Separate doors.
right.
you to the right.
In Upper Egypt, when I visited certain places like 30, 40 years ago, that was also the practice. Women have their own door, men has a separate
That's
door.
with the communion, they still have their own.
Right, yeah, the communion is separated also. And this lady, Ethiopian lady with blue head
Yeah.
cover?
Yes, and she
what's it?
has tattoos, which is a tradition with the people of Amhara. She's really quite beautiful, isn't she?
Yes,
With
yes.
the cross
Yes.
on her forehead. And they speak Amharic, but they're over in the center plateau area near Gondar.
And I think Nigel and Carol and Angela did a great job capturing the mood and the beauty of these people.
Yeah,
Oh,
the next
indeed.
picture is celebrate. What is this picture?
Celebrating the birth of a child. You can see that she's holding her baby, and the priests are singing blessings, that sort of thing. You know, Carol Beckwith and Angela Fisher are internationally known for their photography and the ceremonies of each area of the African continent. And this one, for Morris and myself, we find this one of the more compelling in this book, and we thank them for it. They really do catch the human image beautifully.
Yes.
So the book, here the book has a story for each of these pictures.
Yes.
So all of what we have shown our viewers today is part of the book, and there is explanation, text, scholarly, and first-hand experience, visiting with humans and getting their story and the Ethiopian narrative and the way of worship, way of life.
And getting to know them.
Right. So
And
this...
also, it is, in our previous books, we rarely had people in the photographs, but in this one, since it's the ancient living churches, it is to show the living, we decided to show people. And in different aspects of their lives, church lives, which I think is pretty wonderful.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
It's dedication and determination, because the Ethiopian churches for centuries have been attacked by northern countries and people who thought they could take over, but they always came back and rebuild and let the sacrifices go of what was taken and burned, and recreate it. The tenacity of all of this, and to show their determination to climb up that mountain and pray and be together is really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So we show this next picture. It's beautiful, just beautiful places and monasteries. Oh, this is a beautiful church, and the iconostasis. and the dome above the altar.
Now, this would be a thatched roof, and probably in the round. There are a number of churches in the round.
Yeah. And this, we've seen this before.
That's a church in around there.
That's off of the lake.
Yeah, Lake Tana.
Around church.
And it's a very old church, but in excellent condition.
Yeah. And the next one, that same church, round church.
This is a different one.
Near Lake Tana? Okay. Oh, this is beautiful.
This is Debrecena.
Okay. The location?
Is off the lake.
Yeah.
It's look at that. That's thatched. Look at how masterful they were in putting that all together.
Right. And pictures, paintings of, looks like baptism. And again...
This is Debrecena, too, closer.
Right. Oh, this is beautiful.
This is Debre Behrain Selassie Church in stone.
Yes, and bricks.
The Ethiopians have very little wood, and so they have been encouraged to use what they have. Stone, and they have beautiful, beautiful stonework.
An amazing photograph.
Yes, yes, indeed, yeah. Wow. Honestly, I watched these pieces that you have been watching since it has been recorded earlier. I watched it many, many times because I cannot resist not watching it. It is a spiritual experience with beautiful people of Ethiopia. We come to the concluding remarks about this episode, and so we watch part 6, and then I'll make my own concluding remarks, and that will be it for this episode. Let us watch video number 6. Well, I would like to come now to ask each one of you to make a concluding remark for this episode. So who wants to go first?
Well, I think one thing to remember as you look at the pictures in the book and the pictures on the screen, again, is that this is carved out of rock, not just what you normally say, well, it's just carved out of rock. It's like a monument or whatever. These are entire rooms where they have removed all the rock, and then they would decorate the walls and paint, like you would do a tomb in Egypt, as an example. But these were created as churches where 100 people could be inside some of these spaces that they've carved out. And the other thing that was just so impressive to me is that, as Carolyn has used the word dedication, they get up in the morning on their worship day and have to look forward to an hour and a half or 2 hour climb to get up to meet their friends and neighbors in church. And it's a dedication to Christianity that makes us all feel a little bit less, because they really go through it.
They go through a hardship every day.
Yes, they do indeed. Ethiopia is a very poor country.
You're right.
But beautiful people, and part of it is because of their religion. They're beautiful people.
Yes.
And the children are delightful, and sing precious little songs, clicking and raising their shoulders. They are precious.
Beautiful. Yeah, yeah. How much happiness, satisfaction you did this project and produced this fabulous book? What's your feeling today? That's a project many years in the making.
My heart is singing. I am so happy to show the ways the Ethiopians take the blessings of the Lord. And I hope and pray that a lot of people get this book and the others to understand how the Ethiopians and the Egyptians praise the Lord and are dedicated to the Christian way of life and the hardships that they go through to get away from being chased and murdered. I pray that they are all safe and sound, especially in our country, in the United States, but I know they're safe and sound in Australia and especially in Canada too. And they've moved away from their homes and started a new life. And I think it's our obligation as Christians here to see they satisfy that new home.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Jackson, your concluding remark.
Okay. This has been a journey for all of us, learning and experiencing this great book. And I remember a time when Carolyn and I were in Egypt. We went to one of the churches there, and you just really felt the presence of the Lord. And you kind of I got chill bumps, and it was just wonderful. And looking at some of the interiors of this place, looking at the people, I get that same feeling that God is here.
Yeah.
It has just been an amazing journey again, and working with Carolyn and Bruce has just been amazing.
That's great. I
would have to add, I'm
please.
sorry, working with Michael Saad, Dr. Michael Saad, who's helped us, counseled us, encouraged us with these books, and when they're done, then Michael helps promote them. So he is truly part of our team, and we respect and love him as well.
It has been my honor and pleasure. I have known you from perhaps 2007 when we first met, and we celebrated the launching of the Churches of Egypt, and then later launched the Old Cairo book, and now we are helping launching the Ethiopia book, which is now available worldwide on outlets like Amazon.com and AUC Press throughout the world, and especially in Egypt, if our viewers in Egypt like to buy it. And also in America, both AUC Press and Ludwig Publishing Company, which the email is shown on the screen. And I'm honored and blessed by being part of your team, and our friendship has been growing, and it's a blessing to me.
Thank you so much, Michael.
And of course, knowing Mr. Morris Jackson and communication with the contributors to the Ethiopia book, both Ann Fitzgerald and Philip Marsden and Nigel Bavet, and I hope to meet them one day, and but also plan to invite them to make yet second and third episode about this amazing book that will inspire the world.
Thank you.
I want to be thanking you, but also I want to say an admiration of the Ethiopian community in America in general and around the world, and also especially in Southern California, with whom I befriended a few or many, that they brought with them from Ethiopia many aspects of Ethiopian spirituality and civilization. So when you visit an Ethiopian church, like here in Los Angeles on Slauson Street, St. Mary Church, and other churches, Ethiopian Orthodox churches in Southern California, you feel as if partly you visited Ethiopia. So this adds to their effort in bringing Ethiopian culture and civilization and spirituality to the lands of immigration. So
This is true, and
Yeah.
you know, there's quite a large group of Ethiopians up in Northern California as
Francisco,
well.
Berkeley.
San Francisco has a big church that Morris has visited, and Berkeley as well.
yes,
Very large community up there.
yeah, they are blessing in the earth.
Yes.
And Ethiopians are salt of the earth and light to the world as much as other Christians, but the point is not the whole world knows about the treasures of Ethiopia to the Christian, that she can provide to the Christian world and
Beautiful.
humanity in general.
That's right. That's
Beautiful
correct.
place to visit.
Yes, perfect place to visit, and
As is Egypt.
as is Egypt, okay? we take, they are in union. Wow. Thank you for watching Logos TV Coptic Civilization program. I wanted to sing with Carolyn Ludwig. She said, "My heart is also singing," and my song, to echo her song, I will sing the verse from the Psalm 68:31 that we put on the screen earlier. Ethiopia shall hasten to stretch out her hands to God. In another translation, Ethiopia will submit herself to God. Indeed, Ethiopia have been faithful bride of Christ. And even before Christianity, Ethiopia was faithful to the divine God and Lord, the Queen of Sheba, who married King Solomon and adopted the worship of the divine that Solomon worshipped. And also another psalm which says, Psalm 117, "Praise the Lord, all nations. Bless him, all peoples of the earth." As also the epistle to the Ephesians say, that every knee shall kneel to Christ, shall kneel to God in the name of Christ. And Psalm 68:31 that says, "Ethiopia shall hasten to stretch out her hands to God." The verse before then says, "Nobles or envoys will come from Egypt to worship God." So Egypt and Ethiopia have been in union, in remembrance of the divine in Psalm 68, verse 31. And I feel indeed brotherhood to the Ethiopian people, and way above friendship. It's more spiritual fellowship to the people of God in Ethiopia. This episode is a witness, and this book is a witness from outsiders to the Ethiopian sanctity and beauty of her people, Ethiopian people, sanctity and beauty of the churches, monasteries, art, architecture, liturgy, religious practices, the soul of Ethiopia, Christian Ethiopia, in the eyes of outsiders like the Ludwigs, Mr. Morris Jackson, co-editor of the book, and the author, Ann Fitzgerald, and contributor, Philip Marsden, and the 5 photographers. This is an outsider view of the great country of Ethiopia and its great people, both in Ethiopia and the diaspora. Thank you for watching Logos TV. See you the first Tuesday of every month. And also this program is already on Facebook under Logos Space TV. Logos TV, but between Logos and TV there is a space. Go to Facebook there. You will find the episode. You can watch it right away now as many times as you can enjoy it. And Also, it will go to YouTube tomorrow. Just to go to YouTube and search for Coptic Civilization. You will get all 47 episodes in English and about 57 in Arabic. If you can also say, search for Coptic Civilization Ethiopia, you will get this episode right away on YouTube. Again and again, thank you for watching Logos TV. I'm Michael Saad.
لوغوس تي في. أن نحضر كل إنسان كاملا في المسيح يسوع.
إيمانويل ميديكال كلينيك Urgent Care. نستقبل جميع الحالات المفاجئة لأي إصابة أو حوادث. رعاية عاجلة دون أخذ موعد سابق. لدينا فريق عمل متميز، خبرة